I couldn't stop thinking about how horrible it was to go through the major part of the illness, and just trying to encourage others that have been through the same, men and women, to know that you can thrive after something so traumatic.
Welcome to Your Story Doesn't End Here, the mental health podcast of military and veterans who refuse to be silenced. I'm your host, Rachel, and my mission with this podcast is to be a voice for those who don't have a voice, bring awareness to mental health issues, provide value and solutions, and to change the culture when it comes to mental health within the DoD organizations. Hey everyone, thank you so much for coming back for another episode of Your Story Doesn't End Here, the military mental health podcast. Today's guest is Michelle. Michelle is the founder of Mind Soul Survivor. She not only created 100 comfort bags for those who report their assault, however, she also collected and donated over 50 aromatic stuffed animals to her local forensic unit, also serving on the board of Richland Veteran Mentor Program. She's currently disabled due to PTSD, rape, trauma syndrome. However, manages her symptoms and works a part-time job with special needs adults, encouraging others to live their best life and thrive. Michelle, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me so much.
Yes, I'm really excited that, it's funny how we met is a really funny story. I was browsing through Facebook and there was an underwear ad, and I started scrolling through the comments, and I don't remember what it is that you had said on there, Michelle, but
it was those boxers for women.
Yeah, and I was like,
kind of normal.
Right. And I just remember seeing something that stood up to you as a vet, and I was like, I love connecting with other vets, regardless of what platform it's on. And so, really, really excited to hear your story, especially since I don't know much about it myself. So I'm going to pass it off to you, let you share your story, and take it away.
Okay, so in 2001, I joined the Army National Guard in Ohio. And in 2003, sadly, I was traumatized when I went on a vacation to Louisiana. I was raped, and it took about 3 days for me to get back home. And it was a horrible trial that, I was also raped by a man and woman. So it really was a very strange thing for everybody. And it traumatized me to the point that I was catatonic. I couldn't even get into the shower. It was so horrible. And I was literally dealing with all this and serving in the National Guard. When Hurricane Katrina happened, I can't help it. When it happened, I felt like I wanted to root for the hurricane until it really did happen. And it broke my heart. And I knew I had to get down there and help those people. So I went and helped, and it just full circle. I couldn't stop thinking about how horrible it was to go through the major part of the illness, and just trying to encourage others that have been through the same, men and women, to know that you can thrive after something so traumatic.
That's so beautiful. And I love that you took such a unfortunate circumstance and turned it into something to really help people. Do you mind getting into, what happened with the circumstances surrounding your trauma and the rape?
Well, I went into a very deep psychosis even. I thought they were still after me. I thought that, you know, it was such a dark place in one's mind that I'd never even experienced that. And it was so new to everybody else around me. My unit didn't know about it, and they were helpful to the point of, hey, we're gonna keep you. But they didn't know what to do either, which now I believe there are some certain steps they're taking because of myself and others that have gone through trauma. So hopefully they're developing it more further and further.
Yeah, so that's interesting when we're talking about National Guard, because obviously it's not the same as like active duty, right? It's going to be a little bit
Right.
different. And so are they really involved with your personal life, or is it more just like you just show up, do your thing, and then that's it?
Well, I have to say, I showed up and did my thing, and they allowed me to train and everything. I was kind of out of it for at least a couple of years, and they supported me in the way that they didn't try to throw me under the bus and get me kicked out. But nowadays, I still talk to a lot of the men, and they've been very, very supportive, such as my first sergeant and various sergeants that, I'm their little sister.
So were there other women that you served alongside, or were you the only one?
I believe I was one of the first in my unit. It was a forward support battalion as a diesel mechanic. And yeah, I was one of the first women. I was really trying to figure out how to be a woman in the National Guard, and they were trying to figure out how to work with one. So,
Yeah, that's
uh,
it's interesting circumstances. I think when it comes to women serving in the military in general, but especially when we talk about like one of the first or one of the only or one of the few, like, it could go multiple ways and then trying to figure out how to best support someone when they're going through trauma. Because this happened outside of the workplace, right? This was like this.
right.
Okay. And then, so you said you were down in Louisiana. Did you go down there for like a home visit, or were you going down there for work, or what were you doing in Louisiana at that time?
Well, like most people that want to go to Louisiana, I wanted to see the jazz bars and hang out with a battle buddy that I met in AIT, and his mom. It was Mother's Day, and I was with his mom, and well, Bourbon Street's a rough neighborhood, and they were attacked. I was attacked. It was just not very safe.
Wow.
I
So there were multiple victims that night aside from you.
correct. It was
Wow.
very scary.
Wow. So was there support in Louisiana from, I mean, it sounds like you move forward pressing charges in this case.
I
How was
was
that
not
experience?
able to. I was
Really?
not able to. I came back to Ohio, and it was such a weird circumstance with being a male and a female. And at that time, Don't Ask, Don't Tell was around. So I was pretty nervous. I didn't try to press charges till like 20 years later.
So, and you did then press charges 20 years later. How was that experience with it being so long after the incident?
The officers were wonderful. Honestly, they treated me with a great amount of respect, and I it was a great experience, but it was just too little, too late. When something like this happens, you have to report it immediately, or else it cuts your chances of prosecution like 75%, if not more. Because in Ohio, only 11% of cases that are brought up in front of judges are actually convicted.
Wow, that's interesting. So yeah,
When
I want to get into this a little more because I think most people feel like it is too little, too late when it comes to a year, 2 years plus after something happens, and they just kind of sweep it under the rug. What made you choose to report 20 years after the fact?
I encourage people to report. I know some people feel as though it puts guilt on others, and it's always a personal decision. But um, if somebody can handle that path, it takes a predator off the street. It gives you your power back. And even if nothing comes of it, at least you did the most you could. And it just brought me peace of mind prosecuting, going to my local police station 20 years later and saying, now I did it.
So you went the local route. You reported it in Ohio and not in Louisiana, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And I think
I
it's
know.
important. Go ahead.
I notified Louisiana, but I believe they have so many cases that it probably got lost in the sauce.
Yeah, that's really, really sad. And I mean, I know as we get into like these days of talking more about sexual assault, I mean, there's there's a stigma around it, right? Like we see stories in the news of women who report and get ostracized. It happens a lot in the military. And so I think it's important that we share these positive experiences, even if it didn't necessarily result in someone getting prosecuted. What did it do for you reporting that?
Um, Honestly, I was sitting in the room with the one officer and he's writing down my story. And um, it was freeing. It was like he even encouraged me because, you know, he said that he put a little synopsis of my PTSD trauma in the local police. If they pull me over for a speeding ticket, they know how to treat me. Um, my my county has just been so wonderful with my projects and just encouraging me. I just can't be. I'm so grateful to the community in here that they have helped me thrive.
That's interesting. So, in you reporting, they were able to put something in your file that says, hey, this individual has PTSD. So, if you happen to pull this person over, make sure that you are cognizant and aware of this PTSD. I didn't
I
realize that
love
they
that.
did that. That's really cool.
Yes, at least in my county here in Ohio.
Yeah, and I mean, just I think knowing that now people have a tool where, say, if they do go report a sexual assault or report some kind of trauma, right, whatever happens to them, maybe now they have that tool to ask and to say, like, hey, I would really like this indicated in my file because you never know, some people, when they experience something, having a man come up to their windshield without a woman escort can be re-traumatizing. Sometimes, having someone who's like a really big man, it can remind people of things that they don't want to be reminded of. So I think that is an awesome tool to share with the listeners because I was not aware of that. And that can be really, really powerful. And sometimes for some people, it can keep them out of a jail situation, right? Because, trauma
Right,
responses are all over the place.
right.
So was
Yeah.
it your incident that made you decide that you wanted to get into what you're doing today, or were there other factors in that?
Yes, my incident created a rage in me, I guess you want to say, and it just made me not want to stop until I got everybody to recognize how painful it was, I guess, and how that I just wanted to heal as fast as I could, which took so long to heal. But and then tell everybody that you can come out of the other end. And I mean, granted, I have my good days and my bad days, but I'm not agoraphobic. I can get out there. I can I can manage the anxiety, and you live with um, kind of like a special ability to talk to others that have been through the same situation.
So other than time, the projects you're working on today, obviously reporting, was there anything else that was really helpful for you in healing?
Yes. Uh, Education. I learned psychology, minored in psychology. A job that encourages you, grounding skills, taking care of your health with proper foods actually is a huge help in keeping chemicals correct in your body to keep you going through the day. My military service was bar none most helpful. They didn't, there's something about that that kept me going stronger than I think any other job would have. But, you know, your community, having a support system of doctors, friends, and family, and just having hope. Life is a roller coaster, and you're going to have your ups and downs, and just have hope for a better day. And it will come, and it'll go, and then it'll come again.
Yeah, I think, important to talk about it's not a linear process. And sometimes we feel like we've healed and we're good. And then all of a sudden life smacks us in the face. And then it's like, Oh, and I have to pull myself out of that again. So I love that you mentioned multiple tools. Because it really does. It's not just a one size fits all. You go to therapy and then you're good. You got to think about everything. How are we eating? What else are we doing for us? What support do we have? But it really warms my heart that military was not a negative experience for you, because I get so many people on this podcast where that negative part of their life is their military service. But I think when we're talking about like guard reserves and stuff, I mean, there's a different dynamic there because it's different than, full-time active duty. But had the military not been a positive experience for you, your story might be completely different. So
Mhm.
I love that they were supportive and they were there for you and they were that thing that was really helpful. How long did you serve for?
6 years.
6 years. Okay. And what made you decide to no longer serve in the National Guard?
They were going to deployment, and I didn't feel as though I was up to par, and I was ETSing out basically. Getting out. So I got a general discharge from my PTSD, but I knew it was time. I had broken my foot, and I miss it. I wish it didn't happen.
Yeah, I was gonna ask. I mean, what are your feelings surrounding that? Because I hear different things from different people, and I'm
Well,
curious how you feel about that.
it crushed my soul, but I understood. I understood. And I'm just thankful that I was able to serve. It was a huge part of my life that I really appreciate.
So, do you think had that traumatic situation not happened to you, do you think you would have stayed in longer?
I believe if it didn't happen, who knows what would have happened. But it happened, and it was a good experience in the way, not that it happened, but where I'm at now.
Yeah,
I feel
yeah.
as though I'm more important in what I say, I guess. That's hard. I mean, I've been through it. I know what it feels like. And yes, you're right. You said it's not a cookie cutter way of dealing with stuff. And I think some people lose sight of that and they're like, oh, it works for me. It should work for you. And it's not always that way.
Right, right. So, I think in the process of discharging from the military, I mentioned several people have different feelings surrounding it. But I think one thing that I hear quite a bit of is when people discharge for medical reasons or, they don't feel like they quite finished it. They feel like something's undone or something wasn't quite finished. And it sounds like you have some somewhat similar feelings. How did you cope with that?
Honestly, it took me a while to cope with that. But uh, I, I, I became disabled. I was working through school too. It just, without the medical to help with my mental, there was no way I was able to survive and, by myself. So the medical was a huge issue going through the civilian side. And it was a help, but it was a hindrance at the same time because I had to sign up for disability if I wanted help for my mental. So it was just the route I had to choose at that time because I couldn't work and do school. And I became a phlebotomist, and I would have breakdowns, and it just it affected my life for at least 8 years after the incident. And now it's 2023, so 20 years. Yeah, it feels a lot better now. It's not as scary.
Yeah, I think time is such a good healer, which not everyone wants to hear after, something traumatic happens or something maybe disappointing that we didn't expect in our life happens. No one wants to hear give it a few years and you'll feel better, right? But yeah, that truly it does help so much. And I'm glad you were able to get the help that you needed and be able to explore different areas and different skills because I think that's something else too that is healing for a lot of people. It's like try something different that maybe it's scary, maybe it's not, I don't know, but it's something. And if it doesn't work, the worst case scenario you learned a new skill, you met some cool people, hopefully, and we move on with life. But I want to talk now about, what you're doing with Mind Soul Survivor. So talk to us a little bit more about that.
Well, currently, I'm we encourage men and women survivors of rape and violence find their own path to thriving. And in my community, I set up survivor bags. But really, right now, we're trying to find our next step. I'm looking for people who would like to volunteer to be on the board. Um, I want I want to create an awareness that we can, as a community, recognize what happened to each other and just kind of like have a healing experience. I I like to go to events. We went to the Pride event in the past and a couple other events. We're still very new, only 3 years being in this. And we write out cards of encouragement. And these cards are so beautiful. It really comes from the heart of our community to the survivor. And I think it's like such a wonderful project. I want to continue and maybe even get into the court system to at least give them this motivation before they go in.
So are you just local with what you're doing, or are you on a nationwide scale?
Currently, I'm local, but I wish everybody would copy me, and then I don't have to go nationwide.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's really cool what you're doing. And I think it's so needed, especially like I said, in today's day and age, more stuff is coming to light. More people are talking about things, and to have support, to feel like someone's in your corner when you've dealt with something so traumatic, it makes the world of a difference. And for some people can be the difference between life and death, right? Like it is really that serious. And so
Well, I'd like to show you my favorite. Well, I'll give you a little tour here.
okay.
My favorite card that I received, and this helped me. It says, "Dear Michelle, thank you for helping me start my new life. I appreciate you thinking of me. Life is tough, but I'm tougher. God bless you, Michelle Knight." That's the survivor from the Cleveland house from she was 10 years trapped into this house with two other people. And that kept me going for it keeps me going every day.
That's so cool. Yeah, it's those people that reach out and they're like, "Hey, you really made an impact on my life." Like that's what makes it all worth it, right? Is just if you can just help one person. And so, like I said, what you're doing is phenomenal. And I know you mentioned a couple ways that you're looking for support. You're looking for volunteers, and remind me what area that you're in. You're in Ohio, but what
I'm
specific
in
area?
Mansfield, Ohio currently. Look us up, learn what you can, and if you feel as though you have a heart to help, contact me under Michelle Bond, and I'd love to talk to you and see what we could do.
Is there a website?
Mindbodysoul.org.
Perfect. And I'll post that in the show notes for anyone that wants to reach out. Is there any other way that we can support other than the volunteers that you're looking for locally? Is there anything we can do on like a nationwide scale?
Donations are great. Donations are wonderful because right now I would love to set up a PO box to go ahead and collect cards from the nation.
Perfect. And so, yeah, and I assume website is where people set up those donations, right?
Right.
Perfect. So I hope that if you're listening in and this resonates with you, I know a number of my listeners are MST survivors or sexual assault survivors outside of service. And if this mission resonates with you, I highly encourage go check out the website, see how you can support. Even if every person that listened donated $5, that would make a difference. And so highly encourage you to go check it out. And if anything, share what it is because you never know who you're going to impact. So Michelle, it has been such a pleasure having you on the show. Thank you so much for sharing your story. And you really inspire me. And I'm sure you'll be inspiring so many other people that listen to this episode. And really, really look forward to watching your organization grow and how many more people you help. And the last thing that I will ask you is if there's any last words you want to leave the listeners with today.
Thank you, everybody, for listening, and I hope you felt encouraged by my message.
Thank you for taking the time to listen in today. With your support, we are able to increase awareness of the mental health issues affecting service members and veterans today, with the goal of creating positive change. If you got value from this episode, please take 30 seconds to subscribe and share this episode within your own network. Until next time, remember, your story matters, your mental health matters, and your story doesn't end here.